What I'd like to do in the next few minutes is cover some of the developing aspects of the AHPBA. My message is this association is in a really healthy, strong position for moving forward. We have a number of great opportunities that we should continue to act on. There are many people that I will not be able to recognize in the course of this discussion, but there are a few that I think are important to point out. This first slide shows the new logo for the AHPBA. Interestingly, several years ago, the leadership of the AHPBA, felt we needed a new logo, and so we had a submission competition to design a logo. This selection was difficult. We had over 20 submissions, and the winner was Oscar Andriani, interestingly, from Buenos Aires, Argentina. He had a personal requirement for this design that he wanted to be able to draw a logo by touching pen to paper and completing the logo design without having to lift the pen from the paper. So, one single pen stroke to complete the whole design. It's simple, it's beautiful, and it represents our association very well. This year, we have had lapel pins made from this design. They just arrived yesterday. I've got mine on. For any of you wishing to have a pin, they're available at the desk for a nominal fee. Well, before I begin, and I think as you've heard from Elijah, I really need to thank my wonderful family who's been so supportive of my professional training and career over the last 30 years. This picture was taken on a trip we took to a remote area of British Columbia last year. It shows my wife Marty, my sons Robert and William, and my daughter Maggie. Surgeons are given a wonderful opportunity with a career in surgery, but there are, without a doubt, sacrifices that must be made, and this is certainly true in liver transplant and HPB surgery. These guys have all lived through my regularly last-minute modified plans, and I'm very grateful for your support. As you've heard, this fall, we were fortunate to add a new member to our family, Ashley Younger, after she and William were married. Ashley couldn't be here today, but will be joining us this evening. I think maybe she's the only one of the whole lot, myself included, who's actually doing legitimate work today. So, this slide shows the Arch of St. Louis, where we hail from. This was enacted as a symbol for St. Louis more than 200 years ago, as St. Louis has been known over the last 200 years as the gateway to the West in a center of opportunity. St. Louis is where pioneers, including Lewis and Clark, traveled on their passage to the interior west of the U.S. to explore new opportunities. Probably one of the most famous St. Louisans is Charles Lindbergh, as shown here with the Spirit of St. Louis. As most of you know, he was the first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean in 1927 in the plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, shown in the background. This single flight took 33 hours and required travel through perilous storms, and really was an amazing feat at the time. Interestingly, Lindbergh became friendly and collaborated with Alexis Carrel, a French surgeon shown with Lindbergh on the cover of Time magazine based on some of their scientific developments. In 1894, Carrel had personally been part of an assassination of French President Carnot at the time after he was stabbed in an assassination. The knife wound reportedly injured the portal vein, and Carell at the time had suggested that that repair should be attempted. The French leading surgeons at the time, felt this was a faulty suggestion, and Carell was really derided for this suggestion. Carell subsequently went on to develop suture techniques and a number of other developments that really led the way to vascular surgery and the ability for transplantation. He and Limburg designed the extracorporeal pump system, which subsequently led the way to cardiopulmonary bypass. They had many other developments, and in 1935 they published this textbook on culture of organs, potentially as a way to lead to transplantation. So today, what I'd like to do in the next few minutes is talk a little bit about upcoming opportunities for us in the AHPBA. Webster's dictionary defines opportunity as a favorable juncture of circumstances that sometimes involves risk. This is an important component of our personal lives and professional development, but is also an important component of organizational development. I would add that opportunity often arises out of an event that forces change to the status quo or after a destabilizing event. So what about the development of the AHPBA? I'd like to thank Henry Pitt for background material that he kindly provided me regarding the history of our organization. Around 1990, several North American liver surgeons got together. Bill Myers, Henry Pitt, Mike Henderson, and along with Steve Strasberg and others, and organized or began planning for the association. In 1991, the American Liver Surgery Group was organized, and this group had a single meeting, never to be repeated under that name. The group continued to meet, however, and in 1994, the AHPBA was officially formed. For the first 3 years, the association had only a one-day annual meeting on the Saturday before the start of the AASLD meeting, which at that time was held in Chicago. Less than 20 years ago, this association had the first standalone meeting, and afterwards, the meetings were held every 2 years for the first 8 years. Then in 2005, the association, once it had grown enough to support an annual meeting, began holding these, usually in South Florida. I think it would be fair to characterize the association's early years as being a very small club, getting by barely on a shoestring budget. This is a copy of the posting of the first annual American Liver Surgery Group meeting from 1991, which interestingly shows some of the participants who remain active in our group today, including one of my great heroes, David Nagorny, and Henry Pitt, among others. It is also interesting that the topics seem to be exactly the same as the most important topics we debate today, including resection versus transplantation for HCC, optimal management of hilar cholangiocarcinoma, and the management of colorectal liver metastases. 6 years ago, a seminal event occurred for this association. AHPBA President Mark Callery organized a one-day retreat to discuss the future of our association with a particular focus on changes of globalization. The association recognized that while we had had great initial growth, we had great opportunity for expansion across the Americas. We discussed important opportunity changes that could occur both within education and training, our meeting structure, our communications, and our expansion of our membership, especially in Central and South America. As an outgrowth of this meeting, the association made a name change to the Americas HPBA. Subtle difference, but we felt an important one. further stressing that this association represented all of the Americas, not just North America. The association also established a mechanism for the formation of national chapters to exist as part of the overall AHPBA association. We just have recently proposed and the council at this meeting approved reduced dues for Latin American members as well as reduced fees for meeting attendance for those for Latin America. This has been done for several reasons. Latin American members generally do not have access to the same resources for association dues, and they have their own additional chapter dues that they must incur. They generally have higher travel costs, and we want them as part of our association, and we want them at our annual meeting. At the 2008 retreat, we had an assignment prior to that meeting, which was to read Tom Friedman's book, The World is Flat, shown here, which I would encourage all of you to read if you haven't done so. It's an important book about the changes that have occurred throughout the world. I would emphasize a few points, and those include the fact that technology is allowing connections that have been unseen and unforeseen in the past. Talent trumps geography, and no longer can any country hide behind geographic barriers that in the past may have allowed for superiority. We are now in a state of worldwide competition, and we all must have the right stuff if we're going to succeed. We need to encourage collaboration, and as the slogan goes, we should think globally, but act locally. This demonstrates what has happened in the last 10 years if we have had chapters develop throughout North and South America. By 2012, there were 4 established chapters in Latin America, including Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Ecuador. And here you can see the number of members and new members even in the last year, along with the totals. In the following year, there were new chapters added in Canada, Guatemala, Mexico, Panama, and Uruguay. And each of these will be recognized this year at our business meeting tomorrow. We have 6 additional chapters that are now being organized, including the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Peru, Bolivia, and Paraguay. This association has really delivered on the pledge of going global. In 2010, the AHPBA planned its meeting to occur in Buenos Aires, Argentina. To show our regional support for that meeting, the AHPBA decided to hold our annual meeting as part of that AHPBA meeting. So this was a joint venture that was held as part of the AHPBA meeting, with the AHPBA meeting embedded as part of that overall structure. This meeting was a spectacular success, thanks in large part to the work of the Congress organizer, Eduardo Santibanez, along with Oscar Inventarza and Javier Lenoir. Yesterday, our association reconfirmed the commitment to support the 2016 AHPBA meeting in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So in 2016, our annual meeting will be held in Brazil. So everyone start to plan for that meeting. It's going to be a fun and exciting time, and we look forward to supporting this effort. At tomorrow's business meeting, we will vote on our slate of new officers. The proposed president-elect of this association for 2016 is Javier Lenoir. 10 years ago, I would have said it would be completely improbable that a surgeon from Latin America would be the president of this association, but it's really, I think, a great testimony to the group, and I'm certainly proud that Javier will be our upcoming president, especially at the meeting in Brazil. This slide shows our new membership and our membership totals, and as you can see, the association has really had spectacular growth with over 1,200 members. I believe the association should aim for, and very realistically can aim for 2,000 members by 2020. I want to just take 1 minute to talk about the characteristics of our membership, and I'll go through this pretty quickly, but an important component of any association, any group, is the generational groups that are present. For all of us, our generational background has a big influence on how we think, how we operate. So, in general, most would characterize individuals into these broad groupings based on birth year. Traditionalists, pre-1946, baby boomers born from 46 to 64, Generation Xers, 65 to 80, and millennials, 81 to 2000. These groups and groupings have implications for practice, education, how we think, and how we operate. So, briefly, traditionalists lived through World War II. These are usually very conservative individuals, patriotic, lived with delayed gratification. Baby boomers are generally thought of as workaholics who live to work. I've been accused of that on a number of occasions. They're willing to have self-sacrifice. These are individuals who lived through Woodstock, Neil Armstrong. Generation Xers, surprisingly, our largest group, born between 65 and 80. These are self-reliant, but at times skeptical. These individuals that have lived in the U.S. through Watergate, Clinton, church corporate scandals, shuttle explosions, and corporate downsizing. Millennials, on the other hand, Generation Y, are technology natives. As adults, these are the helicopter parents of trophy kids. They interview and secure slots for preschool play groups, often before birth of the kid. Phenomenal. They're empowered. Some would say maybe entitled. They're consumers extraordinaire. They have relaxed dress codes, if any. So this is my stab at comparing how these groups might conduct something like a literature search. So a traditionalist would be looking for a book or journal from the library, but the secretary probably has to go there to retrieve it. Baby boomers, on the other hand, still like their hard copy journals, Dr. Garden, who we're going to get rid of our hard copy journals. Boomers can search the web. They now have learned email pretty reliably, and they're just starting with texting, finally. Generation Xers, on the other hand, prefer everything electronic. They rarely want a hard copy. They're facile with Facebook, LinkedIn, ResearchGate, all the new technology options. Well, what about millennials? Millennials, they don't want paper in their office. They rarely read a full article, but they do have the latest update of everything. They don't even like email anymore. They get irritated, my kids, with a voicemail or a phone call. Why couldn't you just text me? And they almost never carry cash. I know between the three of these guys, you couldn't scrape $20 together, and they traveled here from out of town yesterday. They are electronic everything. So what about our association? So if you look at the makeup, somewhat surprisingly to me, 6% of our members are traditionalists, 24% baby boomers, 61% Generation Xers, 9% millennials. We can't think like we want to think in the senior leadership of this association any longer. So what changes have we seen? Publication Committee has done a great effort. We've entirely rebuilt our website. There's updates for chapter activities, there are case presentations, we have Facebook, we have YouTube cases, there are Twitter feeds, they developed a meeting app. I'd encourage all of you to get familiar with our web. What about our Education and Training Committee? This group has formalized training standards across programs, and I believe has and will continue to establish the AHPBA as a standard bearer for HPB training. They've established transparency of training programs and are working to establish and educate hospitals on the importance of focused training in HPB surgery. There's improved collaboration with the SSO and the ASTS. There are now standardized specific expectations for case logs, monthly interactive grand rounds. We have a fellows conference at Carolinas Medical and with the SSO. We've established the Langer Fellows Symposium. There's a job site listing on the web. There's a consensus conference planned for this fall at the ACS meeting, and I encourage all of you to attend, that will be jointly sponsored by the AHPBA, the ASTS, and the SSO. There are a few individuals that I would like to personally recognize. When I went to King's for my fellowship in 1990, I went with the intention of completing an HPB-only fellowship. While I was there, I met Jerry McEntee. Jerry was there from Ireland, working to develop the Irish Liver Transplant Center. Jerry encouraged me to gain some transplant experience while I was there, and so I worked with Jerry for part of my time, never expecting that this would become something I would utilize. Jerry is here along with his wife Yvonne for this meeting today. After I returned to Vanderbilt, I was offered the opportunity to join Wright Pinson and Kelly Wright within the liver transplant program when a vacancy arose. I would say, only partially trained at best in the field of transplantation. And so Kelly, and especially Wright, took on the job of mentoring me in this new role. This was a tremendous personal opportunity and one for which I'm very indebted. This was without question the most important time in my development from a career perspective. In 2002, I moved to WashU to work with the transplant program, and at that time I would say the HPB teams had very little direct connections. Over the last 10 years, we've developed a very cohesive team, which I think has benefited all members of the group. To me, there's a great benefit to this critical connection between liver transplant surgery and HPB surgery, and it's been really beneficial to all of us. I'm especially fortunate to have Steve Strasberg, David Lenahan, Magella Doyle, who came from Jerry McEntee in Ireland to work with us as part of our group. We've also been really fortunate with our fellowship trainees shown here. I'd have to say that I think all of us have learned more from these are our transplant fellows many of whom have formed and developed leadership positions in their own programs. These are our one-year HPB fellows. I would have to say I've learned more from the fellows than I think I've ever taught the fellows, so it's really been beneficial. We also have strong affiliated team members in our NPs and PAs and operative team. Miranda and Courtney are here with us and participated in our meeting yesterday. Finally, there are a couple of other important groups that I'd like to mention. We had a management crisis with this association 2 years ago that forced us to terminate our relationship with our prior management company. We solicited outside bids and carefully assessed 3 companies, from which LP was a clear standout. And so over the last year, we've had a complete transition. Noni Lowry's executive director of this group, and she, along with her staff, have done a spectacular job of organizing our meeting. This is the team that I've shown here, and please get to know all of these individuals: Noni, Jill, Heather, Kirsten, Laura, Molly, Danya, Martha, and Amy. They're really spectacular, and we're really lucky to have them. Could we give a round of applause for Noni and her team? So finally, in closing, I think from an organizational value point of view, and something we'll have to continue to focus on, we've had education for improved patient care. We have a wonderful annual meeting. We have a biannual conference with the SSO at GIASCO. We've formed our joint symposium at the DDW with SSAT. We have joint conferences planned with the ASTS in 2015. We're strongly supporting regional chapters. Yesterday, the Council approved $15,000 of support to continue to send AHPBA members to regional chapter meetings. And finally, we're establishing national training standards. And this is really just the start of the work of this association. So, thank you very much for your attention. It's really a privilege to serve as the president this year. Thank you.